Hello and welcome to another episode of Seddon Laceys Comic Stash, and we're back with Sandman, Trade Free, Dream County or Dream Country.
Yep. I mean, county, but possibly if you move a couple of the issues out, you can go out to county. But yeah, it is, isn't it? Like we have, and hopefully I'll do it up there. Done kind of mini episode reviews about Trade One, Trade Two, and it's fair to say we've loved what we've read so far, isn't it? And
Yes.
both of us were very keen to get back to this series and a slightly different one this time, isn't it? Because it's slightly shorter than what we've experienced so far. I would say, in page length, not necessarily in depth, though. But
Yes. Before we go into
oh yeah. Before we get
Sandman,
into that, yeah.
let's get into our reading corners. So, long run number one is the 2018/2019 Deadpool 15 issue series, which I was like, oh, I want to read some Deadpool. Oh, there's a little one hit series that's, fairly short. I'll crack in. And in traditional, oh, we're doing a brand new series with a brand new writer and new creative team. How do we do this? Oh, Deadpool's having his mind wiped. And we're going to do it as a massive story trope all the way through. That he doesn't remember or know anything of his past, which comes back to haunt him at the end. But it's traditional Deadpool fare. Lots of killing, um, people trying to murder him, fighting with the Avengers, him having his usual level of silliness. And
Mirth and mayhem, as I believe Stan Lee would have referred to it as.
yes, an obsession with making pants out of soft toys. It is a fun run. It has a couple of
Is this
issues.
the Scotty Young written?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't read this. I quite like Scotty Young, but yeah, not one that not one that I've actually read.
Yeah, this was only like 15 issues. I'll update for, and because Deadpool is one of those that's quite easy to read when I'm doing other things because it's
Yeah,
not for how fun and joyous it is. It isn't one of those where you have to put 100% concentration to it and take in lots of deep metaphors and life lessons and strong bits of plot that you have to cover. No, it's Deadpool making jokes and hacking things up. You get Kill Puddle, who is now my new favorite enemy because a name like Kill Puddle,
I'm going
which is
to be
great.
googling Kill Puddle right now while you speak because I need to see what this is.
Ah, um, think. Oh, what was the game? Saints Row level sort of
Oh, that's quite a fan
villain
of the Saints Row
design.
games.
So yeah, he was just funny in it.
Oh yeah,
There's
I see a visual of it now. Kind of like Deadpool cross with Joker cross with Fortnite character is
yeah,
how I would describe it from what I'm seeing.
yeah. But yeah, no, as I said, it's just a fun little run. Bashed through it in a day, and yeah, well worth your time.
I've read quite a few of the Deadpool runs along the way. I think you're right. I think they generally motor at a pace, um, generally fun, generally humorous, like that kind of humor, violence. I do probably very similar to what you said of the it's something you can read and you don't have to invest too much of yourself into it so you can be doing something else at the same time, but that's sometimes where I struggle a little bit with Deadpool is it can feel like eating something that is okay but you can eat large quantities of it, and at the end of it I kind of go, I don't know whether I enjoyed that other than I just did it. And I find that sometimes, and some of the Deadpool runs that are out there, I found that they have. I don't know. I guess the ones I like are the ones where they've got really good hidden depth and all of that other side of it. But yeah, sometimes it can be just a little bit too, I don't know, a baseless for me, maybe.
Yeah, no,
I want something more to it.
yeah, makes sense. Obviously, because I've been doing like the White Knight stuff, Batman, and obviously Sandman for this and things like that. I've had that in depth and thought provoking and stuff that you have to be more on when reading it. So it was quite nice just to have that little bit of a palate cleanser of stupidity.
But I think like way back in the day before he become obviously the mega popular vehicle that he is, you get a lot more 4-issue limited series of him, and I think that kind of worked maybe a bit better for me of going 4 and done. Whereas the idea of that over 15 issues, yeah, I'm not so much going to buy into it. Whereas I mean, I always go back to the Joe Kelly one, which is his first solo ongoing series, and he establishes a lot of the stuff that people kind of build on afterwards, like um, that kind of real humor, breaking the full stuff, but taken to the nth degree. But all the way through it, there was like more to the story, and when I say more, I'm not talking about like Shakespeare level more. There was a purpose for everything he did, and it was about, can he ever be a hero? Can he be this? And I think I just would like something else to hang my hat on other than here's Wade again. He's gonna talk to me as the reader, kill someone in a funny fashion, slip on some food, look like he's in not going to get out of it, and then ultimately gets out of it. But as I say, I think for 4 issues I can do that. Whereas I think maybe sort of a 10+ issue run, I wonder whether the novelty would wear off a bit too quickly for me.
Yeah, I said with Deadpool, I sort of, as I said, I use it as a palate cleanser normally for stuff. So I'll jump in, do a run, then leave it for a while, unless there's some like one that pops up that goes, ooh, like if it's like when I was reading Kills the Marvel Universe and things like that. But yeah, no, I think with Deadpool, it's not one that I could sit there and read like all the time, because I think
Yeah,
I would get to that point of being like, but it's not doing anything.
yeah.
But as a palate cleanser, I like it is perfect.
And I do think for all of the for all of the Deadpool shtick that is there, I think that there's so much more that can be done with him because of that. You know, and sometimes I guess I find it a little bit disappointing when people just go, here's Deadpool doing Deadpool things. I think he is a character that you can tell some really interesting stories with, or you can tell some really interesting stories with him being there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be adverse to giving it a go because, as I say, I am a big fan of Scotty Young, and I must admit, I didn't even realise that he'd had a run on here, so I might give a couple of issues a go.
So what have you been up to?
Oh, I was just going to say, by the way, while I was looking up Kill Puddle, I was also looking at the covers. There are some lovely covers to this series as well.
Yes, I very much like the Garbage Patch Kale. Garbage Patch Kale. Can't get my teeth in. Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah.
One of Wade.
I'm looking at issue 14, and it's the War of the Realms, so the big Thor crossover and beautiful Mad Max-esque cover. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yep, hit me in Mad Max me. I've got mine's a double bill,
Ooh.
a modern double bill, Chris. I've been reading new stuffs.
Stop that.
I know. So this is the first 6 issues of Captain America: Symbol of Truth, and also the first 6 issues of Captain America: Sentinel of Liberty. I had to work that through in my head which one was which. I think we talked on one of the solicits, one of the news and solicits episodes, that there's going to be a War of Captain America. I don't think it's called that, but a Captain America event coming later this year. And I sort of said, I think I'll wait for the trades of these two new series to see whether I like them or not. And both of them had issue 6 of it drop on Marvel Unlimited this month. So I thought, right, time to jump in. I jumped into Symbol of Truth first, which is about Sam Wilson. So Falcon for many years, but so Sam Wilson's Captain America, and this is written by, ready for me to butcher a name, written by Tochi Onyebuchi. Let's hope that's close. And written by R.B. Silver. I'll do less on this than I will the other series. This was good. And I know I pulled a face when I said good. I kind of just went along with it. And there is substance here. So very much the storyline is about Sam Wilson is Cap again in the Marvel Universe. He's actually hanging around with the new Falcon. And kind of, I guess, the peril is around baddies like Crossbones trying to get hold of things like super soldier serum and vibranium, so quite powerful things in the Marvel Universe. But it kind of leads Sam on a bit of a path to it's got Deadpool in it in the second issue, like a crossover of him and Deadpool. They go to Latveria with Doctor Doom, but it's more leading to, you're seeing a lot of stuff with Sam and Misty Knight. So a lot of talk about kind of their relationship and who they are and what they're doing in the world. And the big subplot is around Wakandan protests in America. So I guess this is where the lean is. It has a very modern, realistic political lean to it. And there is some villainy kind of to try and get refugees into Wakanda, because Wakanda's been a closed country for many, many years. For nefarious means. But because of this, you do kind of get to a point where Black Panther comes into it, and it leans very much into Cap basically asks to go to Wakanda and is refused because they're going, no, we don't want an American symbol, an American military symbol to be in our country. We police our own borders. So it leans into that sort of stuff. And I do think there's something here, and I think it hopefully will burgeon into something really good. And I don't know what it is, but it just wasn't quite there for me. I found myself going, yeah, I like this, but at equal parts, sometimes I found it a bit dull. Like it almost wasn't packing the excitement that I think can come with a storyline like this. But I do wonder whether this is the long haul. 25 issues down the line, you'll go, there's something great here when you put it all together. But yeah, that one I was give it a go, but possibly not for everyone. However, by contrast, Captain America: Center of Liberty, which is about Steve Rogers, so very much Cap. Everyone's Cap since they were a kid, and all this sort of thing. And this one is written by it's two people. It's Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, and this I really liked. I've read quite a few Cap runs in my time, and there's a couple that always stood out for me, and it's when Mark Waid did a run on it, and particularly when Ed Brubaker did a run on it. And the biggest compliment I can pay this after 6 issues is I felt like I was reading one of those runs.
Nice.
In 6 issue, it kind of made me go, I think they're going to do something really good here. We get, I guess, what you describe as maybe a bit of usual Cap fare. Steve Rogers goes back and gets an apartment where his mother used to live. Like very much that salt of the earth Steve Rogers, who's kind of reestablishing his roots. He's hanging about with a load of like old war veterans in a kind of radio club where they do things on the CB, and then actually they start to get up signals from things like number stations. So and with this, that's the sort of stuff I love. That kind of conspiracy intrigue, what's going on out there. And through the 6 issues, they do effectively establish a new set of villains for Cap. So there's a group that have been controlling the world, for want of a better term, for 100 years. And they all have code names such as like Power, Revolution, and things like that. And very early outdoors in this, Cap and Bucky, they kind of go to disrupt this, and you kind of think this is possibly motoring at far too fast a pace. But no, as much as you get action and confrontation in this, it is very clear of going, this is the first step of this action and confrontation. Yes, he might have met him now, he might have some of the plan, but this is going to be, I think, a sweeping story for a long period of time, full of espionage, intrigue. And I'm being careful to avoid spoilers because there's quite a major thing that happens to the characters and some of the main characters that are around Steve towards the end of the first trade. But I would really recommend this if you like spy movies and things like that. They are hitting it out the park for me, and the fact that it's giving me the feels of my favourite cat run ever this quickly, two thumbs up for this. Definitely give it a go.
Nice.
Looks pretty as well. Art is fantastic in it, by the
I was going
way.
to say, how does it look?
Yeah, I mean, both of them. Like, I will say, both of these, I think the art is very good. But I would say Sentinel of Liberty again has the better art of the two. Very superhero art. So Cap looks like kind of Sentinel of Liberty that they're describing. But also when they go to secret bases, oh yeah, there's secret bases.
Of
It's got
course.
that kind of cool element of it, and nothing feels out of place. But yeah, very good art on this.
Nice. So my shorter of the two remainers that I have is Gotham by Gaslight. A two-story trade. The first one is a retelling of Jack the Ripper. So Jack's done his murdering in London and is now in Gotham doing the murdering.
Doing
they,
that murdering.
Bruce has obviously been off around Europe learning from the likes of Freud for his training because, you know, he needs his Batman training from somewhere that's time centric of the 1800s. Comes back and starts being the Batman, tries to find the Ripper, but can't explain why he's out at night at all hours and is never seen at social events and things like that. So they think that he's the Ripper.
I mean, you would, wouldn't you?
Yep.
Go, that fella. He's always out, putting a cloak on, weird hours, keeps his weird time. Yeah, I really like it as a concept. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you do end up getting a reveal and all the rest. I won't spoil it because it's worth reading. But yeah, that's really cool. And then the second
Art on it is by Mike Mignola, isn't it? Who's the creator of Hellboy, and it's one of those. I do actually remember this coming out, and I didn't get it, and because it's an Elseworlds, isn't it? And certainly at the time, I was like, stick your Elseworlds up your bum. If it's not happening in main continuity, I'm having nothing to do with it. Whereas obviously over time, I'm going to just tell me a cool story. I don't really care whether it has an impact on continuity. If it's that good, I will read it. But I've never gone back to it. It's on my list. I'm not going to lie, but just never got back round to it.
Yeah, it was always one of those ones that I kept looking at whenever it was in like Waterstones and HMV and stuff. But it was always really expensive for how big it is. Because as I said, it's only two stories in the trade.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But it was always like 25, 30 quid. I was like, I know it's going to be pretty, but it's not that pretty. it's not that sort of handover money level.
Yeah.
But having it obviously on Ultra, I was like, yeah, I can read it now. The second story,
God, love Ultra for this.
yes,
It's brilliant, isn't it? All that
yes,
stuff that, and you know, we've talked before about cost and space in your house. There are just some things that I never got around to reading because probably at the time I didn't have the money for it, or you know, somebody else jumped in front of it for money. But it's so good to just be able to go, yeah, there's no restriction to me now other than time. And time is a restriction, don't get me wrong, but it's lovely to kind of go, I know at some point I'm going to be able to sit down afternoon, evening, or whatever and read through this.
yeah. And the second one is very fitting of the turn of the century. Gotham is having a international fair in that way of like, London had Crystal Palace, and you know
I
everyone
imagine
comes with their
there'd
inventions.
be blimps in the air and
Yep.
people in pretty dresses and top hats abound.
Yes. And a bit of corruption in the local government, as always, causes for a
Is
villain.
there a monorail, Simpsons style?
There is no monorail.
Damn it!
I know. But yeah, so a bit of corruption. Villain comes in saying that the trade fair should not go ahead, or if it does, there will be consequences. The mayor says that he's going to go ahead with it, and shenanigans
I love that
begins.
word. I love that word. I need to integrate that more into every sentence I ever say. Shenanigans.
And obviously, Batman comes in to save the day. This one is a lot shorter than the Jack the Ripper part, but again, it is so pretty, and that idea and it being, because we all know of these world fairs that were happening in that at the turn
Yeah.
of the century and all that, and it's just having something in that realm and that time frame. It just works. And I've just seen that the bat that came to tea is now on Ultra as well, so that's being read soon because that's done by these guys as well.
There's also they revisit this Elseworlds universe later. It's around the time of, I can't remember if it's before or just after Infinite Crisis, and one of the spin-offs is, I want to say it's the Atom, but don't quite. But they go into the Gotham by Gaslight because when they have 52 Earths again,
Yeah,
Gotham by Gaslight Earth, so the Elseworlds Earth tend to get integrated in that, and Gotham by Gaslight Earth is, I want to say, like Earth 19. So yeah, there is more to come. But then also I do wonder on ones like that when you've got like a quite a revered story coming back and kind of going, let's do a bit more monthly superhero fair with this. Yeah, that could actually tarnish what they did
yeah.
before. But
The
yeah, it
thing
might
is,
be worth a look.
I think sometimes with stuff like this, just leave them as one and dones,
Yeah, yeah,
because you could do any of the heroes. You could bring Superman in or Wonder Woman in and put them in a time frame, like when we had 1602. You put them in
yeah.
that time frame. You let them play in that time frame as a one-off. Let whoever's doing it tell their story, and it's done.
Yeah.
You
Although
know,
having said that, we were talking recently, weren't we, about the White Knight? Because I think it was last episode where you read that first one and you kind of go, because I have seen that for the next White Knight project, they're going to bring Superman into it and things like that. And you can see the temptation, can't you, to go, let's put all the other toys in this box that you're enjoying. But sometimes they stay fresh because they're more minimal. Because this is, like in the case of this is Batman, and maybe if there'd been a follow up where they integrated some more Bat universe characters. But yeah, it's a tricky one because obviously they want to make cash money as well, don't they? And I think
yeah,
revisit, it's that fan service thing again, isn't it? Of going, I'll accept a bit of fan service, but please don't do it cheaply. And I do wonder whether something that is linked to a bigger event, is it just, we'll sell extra copies of this because people who liked Gotham by Gaslight will come along for the ride. But I don't know much more about it other than that. But might be something that's worth us looking out for in DC Ultra at some point to
yes.
see.
And the other big read
The Beast.
is I finished Hawkeye.
We can't do Hawkeye. Hawkeye must be a show of its own. We can't just do Hawkeye as a reading corner.
It was just to say that it's there and it's now all done.
Yeah. Because I think, and God, I should remember this, but I think anyone who watches this show realizes that memory isn't my greatest skill. I think we did the
We did the first trade
first trade,
around
yeah.
at the
So
time when the TV show came
yeah,
out,
I feel like in the not too distant, we should do a
and
Hawkeye
the
follow
rest.
up. Yeah, yeah. and the rest. Especially as spoiler, I bloody love it.
Bro.
And yeah, I just think there's some great stuff in it, and yeah, I'd like to dig in deeper. So yeah, can we come back for Hawkeye?
We can. All I will say is, bro. Bro.
And
Bro.
I can't remember why, but I do remember particularly singling out the Christmas issue. I think it was when we were doing our Christmas show.
Yes. You
But
were reading it,
yeah,
you read it at Christmas.
yeah, it was bloody marvelous, and it's all bloody marvelous. But I think it's got lots of. It's got a good story that runs all the way through the whole series, as you see when it goes. But I think there are some fantastic singular issues as well. Probably not saying in maybe the same stratosphere, but I feel similarly to the way that they do that storytelling as, and we're going to go into it in a minute, as Sandman does. You have the story, but that time's taken to have one-shot issues that also tell a really good story that are a little bit off to the side away from the main plot line, but you learn lots about the character or the surrounding characters or the universe. So
Yes.
yeah,
So-
Hawkeye and Sandman, spiritual brothers.
Hawkeye next week, then, yeah?
Yeah. Hawkeye next week.
There you go. You've heard us do a production meeting on the air.
Yeah. That's nice though, isn't it? Because there are times when we've done this before, haven't we? Where something's come up in reading corner and we've gone, yeah, like we both really liked it. Boom, that's we've probably got more to say than that than kind of a quick fire reading corner thing.
So, yeah, so next week, Hawkeye. But for now,
to
the Sandman.
Yes.
So this is trade free, and it is issue 17 to 20.
And
so
as I said
4
earlier,
issues.
like, really short compared, isn't it? Considering those first 2 volumes, we've covered 16 issues, and in this one we get 4 issues. But
As I say, it did confuse me at first because I went by picking up the big giant book and went, hang on a minute, this is issue 20 or 21. I was like, but I'm sure I only did to 15. So I had to do the old googly and went, oh, trade free's just those 4 on their own.
And thematically, although I guess part of the thing, whenever we talk about thematically, it's hard because we've not read beyond this. But you can see why, can't you? You can see why this is a 4-issue run, for want of a better term, but why this is collected together and only this. I get it, but yeah, it's just odd, isn't it? Coming from 8 issues, 4. It's a weird kind of cadence to the reading order.
Yeah,
it'd be like watching a TV show, wouldn't it? And it'd be like first season's 10 episodes, second season's 10 episodes, then you get to the next one, it's like 4 episodes. You go, what? Where's my other 6 episodes?
So this one is not main story leading, but is of the world and of lore. And they are 4 little individual tales in the dreamscape, is how I would put it.
Yeah.
So first up is Calliope,
I think, or Calliope. I'm not sure. What something like that.
I'm not good with my Greek muses.
Neither am I. It's not an area of expertise for me, should I say? But yeah, that feels kind of like a reasonable pronunciation for it.
Yeah. So in this one, we have a author who is having writer's block, who
had a very successful first book, didn't he? And I think probably for a story told, I think a lot post this, and I think that's something I'll key into when we talk about it. But that I made something great. Someone gave me some money to make more great things, and I've kind of blown it all in one shot. I have nothing. I have no more ideas.
Yes. So he hears through nefarious means that another writer has something that will help him get over his writer's block. But to get this, he has to get a Bazara.
I wasn't sure. And again, I feel like I've heard of this sort of subsequently in something else. I feel like it's been in a TV show, but Bezor, but ultimately kind of a a gross digested ball of hair, isn't it? This particular one that a doctor had taken out of the stomach of a woman after she chewed her hair for years and years and years, and this is just this mass of kind of grown in her.
So he takes that and hands it over to the old writer, who I can't remember what his name is.
Erasmus Fry.
There you go. And he gives the gift of Calliope, the muse that was his fame and fortune and brought all of his things to him. We get a little bit of the backstory of how he managed to get the muse initially. She was bathing in a lake, and he captured her with witch garlic.
Yeah. As you do.
As you do.
We've all been there. Saturday afternoon. You're bathing in a lake and someone kidnaps you using witch garlic. Yeah. The age-old story.
It's the normal Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he obviously has kept her hostage in his house for many, many years.
He's very aged now at this point, isn't he? He's had his career, he's had his fame, and I guess the truth of it is that his proclivities have moved on from seeking more fame and the adoration that comes with creating great works to weird things such as collecting hairballs that have been inside human beings.
Yes. He, in part of the trade, says that he has to have his one of his books reprinted.
And it's the one that he loved the most, wasn't it?
Yes.
And, I mean that comes back. I won't dwell on that too much at this point.
So Maddox takes the muse to his house, and in the first night of her being there, rapes her because he's a cunt.
Yeah. I mean, I think the truth of it is up until this point in the issue, we're not many pages into it, but I guess he's presented very much as a guy of the time who is like wants to be a success and struggling, but there was no kind of indication necessarily that he was going to be horrifically horrible. And even when that transaction happens and he kind of gets the muse, I think at this stage you're kind of thinking, well, where's this story going to go? Is he gonna maybe keep her for a little while but learn his lesson? But yeah, I think the story is set out straight away of he crosses an uncrossable line instantaneously, and you go, okay, I know now that this isn't his story, this isn't his redemption story, this is he's a cunt, as you say, and let's hope bad things happen to him.
So after that, he goes down and bashes out 5 or 6 chapters of his new work because he has Inspirado. You see that he becomes successful. Writing
great little moments in it because it's done over not many pages, but like you jump from kind of panel to panel, don't you? And it's like, oh, well done for the release of your second book, which is fantastic. Then like an interview where he's talking about his third book, and then a panel where someone wants to make one of his books into a movie, and he says, "Oh, can I be a director?" And it's kind of, oh no. And then jump forward 5 or 6 panels, and that same person's going, "Oh yeah, we've changed our mind. We will have you as a director for this." And he's like, "Oh, too late. I've signed with someone else." And I guess that meteoric rise that creative people sometimes do when they get swept up in this, I thought was told really well, doing it in that quick fire fashion.
Yeah. We then see Calliope in tears. She hates her existence, and brings forth the 3 sisters to beg for them to get her out of it. They obviously say that there's no way that they can do anything. There's nothing that they can do. But the one person that might be able to help them is Morpheus, or as they know him, Orpheus. This in timeline, again, 'cause obviously you said there about how we jump through a couple of years with that is this starts set pre Morpheus getting out of
yeah,
the ball.
yeah. This story, yeah, like effectively is in that time where he's trapped, isn't it?
Yeah,
And we catch up with more modern times, storyline wise.
yeah. So he obviously now free. He comes and meets her. Um, they used to be lovers, and she's like,
Indeed.
"Oh, he's not going to want anything to do with me because clearly it was a bad breakup." But he basically says to Mordok that I will help you if you free her. I will give you all your stories if you free her. So he takes this,
Well,
and
no, he doesn't though, does he? Because like Morpheus says, like basically your option here is I'm not going to do something bad to you as much as I can because I'm very powerful. I'm going to give you a choice. Do you just want to let her go and we'll almost call it bygones be bygones? Pretty gross considering he's a rapist and a serial
yeah,
rapist, but for the concept of this, and he refuses, doesn't he? So then Morpheus kind of goes, okay, then your punishment will be until you release her. Because he basically says, I can't let her go because she's where all my ideas come from. So he kind of goes, okay, if you won't let her go, then you will perpetually have ideas. You will have a constant flow of ideas that will not stop until you choose to let her go. And I mean, I was thinking about this one afterwards and going, what is the suitable punishment for what he's done? And I think your mind initially goes to, well, like, I don't know, cut his balls off. All of the kind of natural gut reactions you have as a human to when you find out someone's raped someone. But actually, this is macabrely fitting, isn't it? Like it
yes,
really, because if you don't kind of see where the story goes, and I promise we will get into that in a second, but if you sort of said that flatly to someone, they go, well, it doesn't sound like much of a punishment, does it? But ultimately, it is quite the punishment, isn't it?
yes, because he literally gets bombarded with so many ideas that it drives him to basically madness, where he's was trying to get his ideas out and down that he
Yep.
tears into his flesh and writes on walls in the blood.
Yep. Stubs his fingers down to kind of unusable states by trying to scratch them onto brick walls, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah. Um, he then goes to the doctor that was. Oh no, the doctor comes to him because he's like, I'm a doctor, I can
Yeah.
help. And it's
Yeah.
the crazy guy that sold him the hairball at the beginning. Um, takes him in, sort of goes, "Oh, you've got to go and tell her that she can go back to the house, tell her she can
Yeah,
leave."
there's that kind of almost weird confession moment, isn't he? Where he
Yeah,
kind of goes, right, what I need you to do is I need you to go to my house in a room at the top. There's a woman held captive in there. And I mean, what a strange thing to say out loud, I guess, at any point in your life. But yeah, certainly I think he is twigged at this point. He needs to free her because he can't live like this.
so probably he goes free. Morpheus has a chat with her. Is one of those. It's that weird. Do they try to forgive each other for what happened in the past? Sort of go, oh, can we like each other? Are
Yeah,
you doing this for a reason? And Morpheus like, no, I just know what it's been like to be
yeah,
kept as
because
a
because the,
slave.
and that's the thing, isn't it? I think as a story, when we talk about like kind of how any of these stories link into the wider story or what they're trying to do, and I think there's a reason why this volume is called Dream Country because it wants to talk about kind of stuff that happens in dreams. But I think very, very specifically, what this one does more than any of the others is we've seen that part of Morpheus where he was captive, and this is a way to revisit that story, isn't it, and tell that captive story for another lens, and as you say, like it leading to not necessarily a reconciliation or a resolution, but how maybe the animosities you've built up with someone becoming less important when you realize that both of you have had worse things done to you.
Yeah. So yeah, so them two, they go off, and we see that Fry's book, the is it Here Come the Candle,
Yes.
which is basically him telling his version of what he did with the Muse, and how the Muse was his candle that kept his ideas coming. Um, I really like this one.
So did I. This one I thought was in a volume that I know is quite revered, especially for two specific stories. This one was really impressive for me. I feel like it's potentially not forgotten but drowned out by the next two issues. But I think as a standalone, this could be my favourite one in this volume. I think.
Yeah, I don't know, it's between this and the last one for me on
Oh,
favourites,
Chris,
but
we are simpatico because it would be between this and the last one for me. And I think if you ask most Sandman fans or look at awards and things like that, people would say the middle two. And that's we'll get to the middle two, and they're fantastic. But yeah, I really like this, and I really liked the end one especially. Maybe there's something about us in this. I think I like that lean into the very dark side, the dark things that human beings can do based off of desire, greed, power hungry. And I think I really do resonate with stories that lean into that, but also there is a comeuppance.
yeah,
It's that well, I guess like a lot of the moral tales and fairy tales and anything like that of going sometimes getting what you want is a bad thing, and desiring things that maybe are outside of your skill set or remit and being willing to see. And I know in this she's not a human, but let's bring it back to kind of that human condition of going seeing other people, other creatures, whatever it may be, as insignificant compared to you and your desires. There
yeah,
are consequences for this, and yeah, I really loved it. I really did.
yeah. It is that thing of like, yes, you've got out of that person or that thing what you want out of it, and you just don't give a fuck about it. But
Yeah.
no, they matter too, and there's no such thing as a free dinner because
And
shit will come back to cost you.
and there's something about writers writing a story about writers that very much intrigues me, and it's not that kind of over leaning to what we'd refer to as meta now, but I think like I imagine at some point in time Neil Gaiman has sat down and had writer's block,
Yeah,
so like he can bring that kind of perspective thing to it that people who don't do it for a living or have never experienced that can. It feels real from that side, whilst leaning massively into the fantastical, like this series does. But I don't feel like that ever overwroughts everything. Anything like we're dealing with Greek muses, hairballs,
and cunts.
dream, and like the endless. Um, but it feels like such a realistic human story. It really does. We have bits, and I said earlier, like there's some great storytelling techniques in this. The skipping forward in time, but like giving us those views of things that I think the cult of celebrity in the world that we live in, we've kind of now learned that this is probably not the stuff about kidnapping people and raping, but this is how that celebrity and fame kind of life rolls, doesn't it? Like you go from someone wants a bit of you to everyone wants a bit of you. So I think you get that, and there's a great bit as well where you mentioned it earlier, where Dream or Morpheus has giving him this mechanic of ideas just flowing. He's actually buying a newspaper, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he sees something on the front of the newspaper, and then he starts, and you just get this 4, 5, 6 panels of just him free flowing ideas for stories. And don't get me wrong, I mean, some of it probably to show the franticness of this as it goes on. They kind of get wibblier and wobblier and stranger. But I think early on in that, these are probably ideas that gaming has had for stories.
Yeah.
I just think it's fantastic.
Yes, I did like this one. Before we
I
go into
will
the next,
say,
oh, yeah,
this is probably the one to keep your eye on, though, because we said about these being standalones. This is the one that probably has the biggest link with where we are to go. Because I know you didn't mention it in the synopsis there, but we do hear about his son,
yes,
Morpheus, and I don't know for definite because I haven't read it. But that when that bit was dropped in there, I went, okay, remember that because I reckon that's coming back.
So next we go into A Dream of a Thousand Cats.
I mean, it was a tougher sell this one for me straight away because, as we
It's
know,
cats.
I'm a dog person. Now, if this had been called A Dream of a Thousand Dogs, I think I'd be declaring this the greatest issue of comic books ever.
So this one is a story of a cat, a Siamese purebred Persian blue cat who,
Good memory skills, by the way, because I'd have just gone with cat.
well, I just remember it because they have a whole thing about like midway through where the humans of the story kick off about the fact that she's purebred when we get to that bit in a bit
Oh,
later.
don't. My heart's already tearing thinking about it.
So the cat's in the house, and the owners, I was going to say parents, the owners want to go upstairs for a bit of slap and tickle. Yes, I've been listening to the Squeeze recently. So it says, "Oh, come upstairs because I'm ready. I want some now,
Yeah,
but
I
make
can't
sure that
remember
you."
the exact wording, but it was like, hurry up, I'm starting to lose the mood.
Yeah, but make sure the cat's locked in.
Yeah.
They obviously go up to have their fun, and the cat goes out because they left a window open.
Fools. Poor owners.
Terrible owners. So the cat goes off to the local graveyard where there are an array of other cats, and the cats are having a chat about how cats should be more in control of things, and how their
Well,
owners just
but
feed them.
on that journey, isn't I'll say on that journey. I don't want to sell it as like it's kind of one of those Disney long journey animal things. They are just walking to it. It's not like very
Yeah,
far to go, but the cats are on the way, kind of discussing how someone is going to speak, and when I say someone, they know the someone, but you kind of get that feeling, don't you, that this is a big thing in the cat world, and they're all kind of intrigued to see what this is going to be. And yeah, as you say, they arrive at the graveyard and they are told a story, aren't they?
yeah,
A story about how the world was.
yes. We also see that the Siamese cat has eyes for the tomboy cat, who
He
looks a bit of
was
a
handsome
stray.
fella. Yeah, it's bad boy. Always
Yeah.
happens.
Um, we then cut to back to the humans, seeing that the Persian has had a litter because she was in heat, and he should have known this, so that's why he shouldn't have let her out. And we get told about the fact that it's a purebred, and the kittens are bastards and impure and put in a bag.
It was horrible, wasn't it? This bit. I'm not a cat person. I will say this bit. I was reading it and I get angry at that stuff more than upset. I'm not one to get upset. Animal cruelty does not make me cry. Animal cruelty makes me want to be very cruel to the human beings who did it. And that was what was happening to me when I was reading this bit. That kind of careless nature of going, um, you have something alive in your house and things will happen with alive creatures. Things like this. If you're going to have cat, I reckon there's a reasonable chance that cat, if let out of the house, which they probably should be, this might be the ultimate part of it. But to just because they're one, because the owners didn't want them, but two, as you say, because they are crossbreeds, there's probably no value to them either. It's as simple as chuck
grab
them
a
in a sack
rock,
and throw them in the river. Yeah,
grab a rock, bash them in a bag in the river. We then back to the cat who's traumatized by this, doesn't understand why this is done, and goes into the dreams of wanting to have questions of why these things happen and everything like that. Goes to Cat's side of the dream world, where we see a giant pile of bones, and the cat is told that they can speak to the dream of the cat world, but they have to make their way to the mountain and the cave beneath it. So off the cat goes on its little adventure to go speak to the Dream Lord, who is Morpheus in a cat, and he tells her of the times of what it used to be like,
yeah, very
where
different world.
cats were the size of humans, humans were the size of cats, cats were the dominant
Dominant,
species,
yeah.
chasing and playing with humans and eating them. They didn't care for mice. Mice were far too small for these giant cats. And how they want to bring that world back. And the only way to do that is to get other cats.
Well, that's the thing they're told, aren't they? That the world changed because over time the human beings kind of banded together, didn't they? But not banded together and did what you'd see, I guess, in a Planet of the Apes style movie where they banded together and took over. They actually banded together and had a unified dream. And in
Yeah,
that unified dream, it was so powerful that effectively overnight the world become the world we are now, and actually this eradicated all of the past. So it wasn't like there was something in the history books because people could remember the day that they were small, cats were big. It was nope. Now all of a sudden reality has changed, and that's the power of
but
potentially the power of dreams is to be able to
yeah,
change reality.
yeah. So the Persian cat makes it its mission to find all the other cats in the world and speak to them about the time in the world of the previous.
Yeah,
And it sort of goes, well, if we can get 1,000 cats to dream at the same time, the same dream of the world being what it used to be, it can go back to way it was. Um, Cat goes around, does lots of talking to random cats.
cat tour.
Yeah, jumps on a boat, goes across to America. Big groups, small groups, random strays, talking to them all, telling them of what the world was. Um, Ends up where you see the humans watching the cat sleeping, wondering what is it dreaming about as it's flailing its legs around, and they go, "Oh, it's probably thinking about chasing mice or hunting." Um, and that's pretty much it for this one, really. It's
I think so. As much as I said the first one was brilliant and possibly my favourite, this is brilliant. As a singular issue, as a singular story, this is fantastic. I need to get a thesaurus to find more words to describe what this Sandman series is like because these hits they just keep on coming, don't they? Like that bit you said about the end. I mean, I'm loving the issue all the way through, and to get that amazing kind of full stop moment on it of because that's what an owner would do, isn't it? They'd look at their cat, or let's say it was a dog even, and you kind of go, "Oh, look how cute they are. I wonder what they're dreaming of." And ultimately, as the story has told us, they're trying to change the world back to what it would be, or a world of dominance, and that exploring the power of dreams and the idea of a collective dream. So, okay, bear with us here as I meander off with this one because, yeah, it's cats, and ostensibly it's this idea of changing the world. But I kind of at the end of it, I went, well, what a powerful story because that's anything, isn't it? So, um, let's go back to one of the famous dreams, the "I have a dream." But that idea of going, if you can get people to buy into your dream, your ideal, you can change the world and you can make the world a better place. Now, of course, there's a darker side to that because you can also make the world a worse place. But yeah, I come to the end of this and I go, what a great way of punching that story home of we can be better. And as ever with these Sandman stories, tinge with that macabre kind of horror side of it. Now, this one's a little bit more of a generic one because, as I say, it's about the bad stuff happens with the drowning of her kids and the offhand nature of it, and the offhand nature that probably is done. Like
Yeah.
animals are put down much more regularly, and I don't even mean the ones that are badly treated, but this is more common we do. But that getting yourself into the mindset of um, considering the damage you can do to others and considering the feelings of others, in this case, a cat. But yeah, this is amazing. I would put this in the hands of anyone and go read that, and I think they'll enjoy it. I liked the last issue more, but I think this one's more accessible because it's about cats.
Yeah. And in a way, it is also even though it is cats, it is a very easily relatable
Yeah,
into, you know, think of modern times, the whole Black Lives Matter stuff or
yeah,
the climate change stuff that we're getting
yeah,
at the minute and things like that. It is that whole sort of thing of like, if you want change, you can't do it yourself. You need
yeah.
the not even like everyone, but you need a weight of
You need
numbers
enough. Yeah, yeah.
to make a change.
But so sort of stark because you have that moment in it where I mean, like the tomcat, like that's traveling alongside, is clearly less convinced by it.
Yeah,
Just kind of going along for the ride, I think, because he likes it. But you even get that moment where, quite offhand, but the kind of biting satire that I think comes with it of, and it's related to the cats of, you'll never get 1,000 cats to agree on anything. And isn't that oh so true about? And what that story is trying to say is the problem
yeah,
is that it's really hard to get us all to come together on a common cause because we'll always apply our view of the world or that particular spin of ours. But yeah, absolutely 10 out of 10. Fantastic. More of this, please.
so next we have A Midsummer Night's Dream. Um, this is incorporates quite a bit of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream.
Making his reappearance, a recurring character now in the
Yes.
Sandman universe is our Billy Shakes.
Coming back because what we didn't hear in the amazing Men of Good Fortune, the one hit of coming back every 100 years, is that Shakespeare made a deal with Dream that he had to write him 2 plays.
Yeah, the whisper moments that we
Yes.
saw earlier are coming back.
So Shakespeare is on his way to meet up with Dream to perform his play for Dream, one of the two that he's going to write for him, and it is Midsummer Night's Dream. The cast, the thespians, are asking, well, what inn are we going to? Where are we doing it? And it is basically in the Out. They are on
Old
Wilningham.
school, yeah, old school kind of performance in the park
Yes.
kind of things, isn't it?
And at one point, when Dream appears, when he's talking to Shakespeare, he's like, "Why are we doing it here?" And he's like, "Well, this plays have always been done here before humans. Plays were done here." So they get on with it. The crew very much. Why are we here? Well, there's no. We're not going to get paid. There's no audience. What is all this? And we get them acting through A Midsummer Night's Dream to a very special audience of monsters, trolls, things from different realms,
Yeah,
all
fairies, all manner of kind of, I guess, old school fantasy fairy folk galore, isn't it?
yes, that are all Morpheus's guests. Um, runs through the first part of Midsummer Night's Dream. Um, we then have them talking to each other at half time, where one of the imps says that he would be a better Puck than who is the human that's playing Puck.
Yeah, the actor Puck.
Yes. Um, is it Tatiana was the queen that was Morpheus' special
Yeah,
guest he was sitting
yeah.
with? They go and talk to Willy Boy, and the head actor, what was his name?
Oh my
I
god, I've forgotten his name as well.
I can't remember who his name is, but he was like, "Oh, we need coin." So she hands him this big old bag of gold, um, and she also shows interest in Hannett, Shakespeare's boy, who has a little bit of a role in the play itself, but also sort of mentions the fact of how Daddy's terrible and spends no time or has any care for him because
Yeah,
he's too busy doing
uh,
plays.
a story as old as time, isn't it? Like that when they integrate that element in.
So for the second half of the show, the imp is playing Puck and being mischievous, and as you'd expect Puck to be in Midsummer Night's Dream. They all enjoy the show. All the guests leave. The actors wake up the next morning, slightly confused of what had happened the night before and who their guests were and what was going on. The bag of gold turns out to be a bag of golden flowers, and Dream tells Shakespeare that he will see him again
One more
when his
time.
second play is ready. I struggled with this one because I struggle with Shakespeare.
Um, so I guess for context, it's widely considered the best issue of Sandman ever written, and it actually is the only singular issue of a comic book ever to win renowned literary awards. In fact, one award. They put a rule in after this to say a comic book can never win the award again because, as far as they're concerned, this was comic book perfection. So they should never hand the award to another comic book ever again after this.
I could quite have happily not read it, but I, I, as I said, I think it's where I stand on Shakespeare more than where I stand on Sandman with this one. But yeah, it didn't do anything really for me. It was just another retelling of Midsummer Night's Dream, which I said when I was a kid and had to do it at school for English, did nothing for me. Yeah, yeah, for this one,
Really? Fuck.
yeah.
Um, it's odd. I say all that about how renowned it is. It is my least favorite in this trade. Um, and I don't really know why. Because I should love it more than I do, and I do love it. But I can see why it won all those awards. I'm a big Shakespeare fan. Loved it when I was doing it at school. But you can put the Shakespeare in the bin. Like it's not really the Shakespeare a part of it that I think for me kind of is the attraction of this. I think it's a good framing mechanism, isn't it? Everyone knows who Shakespeare is, so having that kind of link to him seeing Shakespeare before and kind of grounding Morpheus's story and existence in things that we know happened is very handy to do. But I think it gives that excellent look at probably what the life, and again, you've only got X amount of pages to do this in, but what the life of being in an acting troupe, for example, would actually be. You get the touching on the elements of the errant father who is actually there but cares more about his
Work.
job in this case, than he does his child. And even though when he integrates his child into his work, the child is still kind of going, oh, yeah, but like this isn't parenting. There's no connection here. It's just easier to have me here so that you don't have to stop doing that thing that you want to do. And I know I might be wrong here, but how I read it is you sort of said about the imp. Those were the characters from A Midsummer Night's Dream. So the Puck that so the imp that takes over from the actor playing Puck is Puck, or certainly that's how I read it. And like because when they're watching it as an audience, and I thought some of that stuff was hilarious. I thought like seeing these mythical creatures or real creatures in this universe talking about the events and kind of going, well, it didn't kind of happen like this. That they were putting on this show for these revered old gods or old beings, and Morpheus, in respect of them, had got supremely talented person like William Shakespeare to be there to give them their proper kind of final send off of going, look, your story will forever live on because I've taken this creative person and got him to write this and perform this. What do you think? And then they went away relatively happy to kind of go, okay, yeah, you know, our time here is done. Although did try and convince Shakespeare's kid to to jog on with them in a I wasn't sure whether there weren't maybe I read it wrong, but I felt like there were some sinister undertones from Titania, a grown adult fairy woman. I thought it lent a little bit into, rather than I'd like a kid, it was a bit more like a pedo. I'd like a kid, but maybe I just picked up the wrong vibe from that bit. But yeah, I do. I think it's really, really special. And I think maybe if it had been in another collection or a standalone, it might have hit me more. But I just my love for the two stories that come before this and the one that comes after this, I think just lessens the impact of this a bit. But yeah, I do. I think it's a masterpiece. Another 10 out of 10 for me. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so for me, this is the first bad issue so far.
Well, I mean,
but as I said,
let's go with issue you don't like rather than bad issue, because I don't think there's any universe where anyone could describe this as a bad issue. I think not liking it and it being bad, there's got to be a line there, because this isn't bad, is it?
No, bad is the wrong word. Yeah, it's the one that doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah. Art-wise, I thought the art in this one was so. For the first two issues, we transitioned into Kelly Jones, which I think is the first time we've seen Kelly Jones art in Sandman. And in this one, it goes to, and in fact, I'm going to have to fact check this. I think it's
Charles Vess.
Yeah. I really like the Kelly Jones art on the 17 and 18. I thought the art in this was the strongest art of this trade. I thought it really. I wasn't alive when Shakespeare was doing this stuff, despite the grey hair, but it really invoked the feel of the time, and not only invoked the feel of the time, but when the fairy folk appear, that transition from the day of the humans to the early evening, midsummer night of the fairy folk again, then back to the world of the humans afterwards. I thought the art was fantastic in this, probably the best art in the whole of the trade for me.
Yeah, I will say it's very pretty.
Yeah. There's also something in there which there's a line around Shakespeare, no matter what the play is, turning tragedies that happen in real life into his plays, and then you get that line towards the end, don't you, where Hamnet died X amount
Yeah.
of years after this, and of course, then you go, oh, and then he wrote Hamlet. So yeah, I do. I kind of wish that this was my favourite, because I do think that craft wise, this is probably possibly the best issue in it. But yeah, it's more of a testament to how much I love the other three stories to make this not my favourite.
Yeah, to me, this doesn't even hold a candle near A Man of Good Fortune, their 100 Years one, or even the Diner in the first trade.
Well,
They are far superior.
maybe after we do the fourth story, we'll come back to kind of how anything in this compares to Sandman that we've experienced so far.
Yes. So the last issue is Facade, which is about Elemental or Element Girl,
Yes, yeah.
who I read recently because of the Gaiman,
Metamorpho
yeah,
series, yeah.
yeah, that was in the Gaiman collection. Who is known as Rain. So she is seen opening up with her smoking, which I was like, oh, Sed's gonna love this.
I mean, yep.
So
Excellent
I have
ashtray. I mean,
just loving having a fag, and it's
yeah,
more of that whole. I don't need the nicotine or the tar or any of that. I just want to smoke and how it passes the time.
yeah.
She waits for a phone call from the agency because
Yes.
she needs to know about her when she's going to get her check, but it's not really about that. It's because it's the only human interaction that she has. Because she doesn't leave the house because of her looks. We then have her getting a phone call from an old friend who wants to meet up and go for dinner. So she has to construct a fake face so she doesn't show what she looks like.
Yeah.
We get a wonderful line where she goes, I used to make these out of skin, but they rot too quickly. So I use
I'm glad
porcelain.
you picked up on that as well, because it's quite hard, because I think when we do these stories, it's kind of, you get caught up in the story, maybe the grander concepts and things like that, but it's those sort of parts, those sort of elements that make Gaiman's writing so good, because you could just not have that line, but I think it adds so much, doesn't it? It adds so
Yeah,
much depth to kind of the plight of this character, but just the extra thought of going, yeah, like if she is from elements creating skin, like it's not going to be easy. But of course, in as it's Element Girl and it's leaning into a superhero world that we've seen before, if that was probably the Metamorpho series, or written by not a Neil Gaiman, it'd just be like, oh, grown skin, and
yeah,
and yeah, that kind of digging into these feats that these people do have a consequence and aren't always as pleasant as it might seem they can be.
yes. Before she goes to have a meal, we get a flashback of her and why she's signed off, to use an English term,
Yes,
of
yeah.
work.
Not the
Um,
sick.
she went to the Egyptian pyramids to find something in the sun god Ra's temple,
Yeah.
and in touching said element, has become Elemental Girl. Um, she goes out for this meal with a friend, Delia. Um,
Not Delia Smith.
not my Delia, no.
No.
Goes to the Italian restaurant.
Well, you wouldn't go out for a meal with Delia Smith. She'd just get drunk and start shouting in the restaurant, wouldn't she?
Yes. I have people that work at the football club that have had to deal with her when she's absolutely shit faced after a game. She
Loves to
knocks
sort
back
herself,
about.
doesn't
She
she?
knocks a few bottles back every game.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
You would
Ordered the
do if you had
food.
to watch that shower shite weekly, though, wouldn't you?
Enough about the football. We're talking about
Okay,
Sandman.
yeah, sorry, yeah, we're talking about comic books. This is not the football podcast that we don't have.
So ordered the food. She has a simple spaghetti bolognese because a friend's ordering loads of weird and wonderful stuff. The waiter brings the food out, and just as the food's been put on the table, her mask slips, falls into the plate, and you get a beautiful visual
I'm so glad you
of
picked up on that as
the
well. Yeah.
mask in the spaghetti and just the look on Delia's face of what the actual fuck.
And that whole bit, that whole sequence, because you are the camera, the lens is her, isn't it, looking
Yeah,
at Delia, and so you're looking at her. Then in the next panel,
the eyes are slightly off.
your view of her is obscured by kind of a black ring around it, and then as you say, the next panel you see that the face has slipped off, and you realise that that obscurement was the face coming away and obscuring her vision. Yeah, it's such a brilliant bit of artistic endeavour, and a real testament to what comic books can do that other art forms can't.
Yes. She legs it out of the restaurant, forgets her bag, gets to her house, a flat, wonders how she can't get in, then remembers that she is elemental and just burns her way through the door. And she sits there pondering ways for her death. And then we get a return of a character we haven't seen for a while. We get our girl Death.
Yeah.
And Death's there explains that the door was open on how she got in, and basically lets her go through all of her emotions and why she doesn't want to live anymore, and
Yeah.
all the wrongs, and is the ear to her. Death explains that many people want to die, and the pains that these things happen, and all the other things of moving on and stuff like that, and tells her that she should beg to Ra, is Ra is the one that has given her this power for a merciful death. You get some beautiful art of her and Ra. What they do, how they do Ra, is just stunning. And at the end, the phone rings. Death answers it and
That's
just
a
says,
sentence and a half,
"Yep,"
isn't it? Phone rings and Death answers it.
and just literally says subtly, "She's gone away, I'm afraid."
Yeah. Won't be able to come to the phone anytime soon.
Yeah, I loved this.
Yeah. Yeah. I weirdly enough, I think it's probably the least well known of the four stories in this, but it shouldn't be, because it is. I'm going to use the term wonderful yet again for the fourth issue in a row. It is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, the use of death, instead of it being Morpheus and someone dreaming and wanting that, just having death come and showing death again, like we did when we first have her in the beginning of the it was the end of the first trade.
Yeah.
When she goes to the room with the old guy that's dying, and he wants to just play that song one last time before he passes, and the kid playing football, with the you'll see me again soon. Death is just so good in this, with it just being, when you see death in a lot of things, it's always it's morbid and scary and cloaked, and I'm just coming to take them away, where it's just like, no, this death is there, and there's a compassion with her that's written into her that's just so good. And I love this. And as we said, with bits like the mask falling off, just the visuals of that just take that step above other things, because in a lesser artist's hands or a lesser storyteller's hands,
Yeah.
as you said, like you said and mentioned about the flesh stuff, it would have been two panels, her
Yeah.
sat down, mask falling off.
Yeah. Yeah. Some sort of probably like in a lesser writer's hands, that probably would have been a hair, wouldn't it? Because
Yeah,
it'd have gone something along the lines of it's real hair, but it would be like a wig, and then that would fall off. But no, like it's that extra steps to kind of craft. And I said it earlier, those parts that even when the primacy of the story isn't to be a horror story, um, you still have those macabre horror elements integrated into it. And again, face falling off and things like that. So you always have that in it. And when you say about death, I mean, I think that the usage of death that we've seen so far, I'm with you, has been exquisite. And I think the truth of it is that for me, you're going, what a great character. And it is, but actually, I think the greatness of it comes from that exploration of the concept of death that we experience, not death as an actual character, but yeah, no one, well, I say no one looks forward to. I guess I'll come back to this in a minute because this is the first time and this is a story where someone does want death. But that actually, as much as death is an end, it is a necessity, it has to happen. And that exploring the concept of, so this is the first issue in this trade, and obviously it's the last issue, so but that doesn't have Morpheus in it at all, does it?
yeah,
And you kind of go, okay, and it doesn't really lean into dreams much either, which it's dream country. But I think what this one does is by using death, the concepts of death, it leans into the endless, which is what Morpheus and desire, etc., are. And you see that term endless is right for these characters because it is a necessity. And they touched on this slightly, I think, in the first issue of this around sorry, not in the first issue, in the last issue, with the old gods are gone, but they say quite a few times, but the endless will be around forever because they're
yeah,
required. And I guess as that endless concept of going, these aren't gods as in Thor, Odin, anything like that. These are concepts that are personified and concepts that the universe, us as human beings, as individuals, everything needs for it to exist.
yeah,
And yeah, I think so smartly done in such a short amount of time in this. Like I think in all of these stories, but particularly probably the first one and this one, you have enough material that a lot of people would have needed 6 to 10 issues to get across. And
yeah,
this is done in 22, 24 pages. Yeah. And I mean, this one, I think, massively jumped up of my love list because that, I mean, that bit that we just focus on is the end of it. But the build up of that. So you get this really sad tale of this woman. And you get the look at superheroes, that superhero world, that thing we take for granted that, they get powers one day,
yeah.
everything's fine, everything's brilliant, nothing bad can ever happen. They can
The
do all this
world's
stuff
great.
without a thought. Yeah. And of course, with this, the look at suicide, which is a very tough subject matter to, I think, lean into because it is hard, isn't it? It's a hard subject to talk about openly without it ever becoming too judgmental or the other side of the coin seeming like you are going, it's fine, isn't it?
Yeah,
Finding that balance. And I think this finds somewhat of a sweet spot where it neither puts its foot in either camp as being the right answer, but gives a fair representation of both camps so that it's almost up to you as the reader to kind of go, is the release that she's asking for actually what? Or I'll go back to some of the things we've talked about. A lot of things. I, as the reader, get to go. What would I do?
yeah,
And this does it so well.
yeah. So for me, it's the first one and this one are the standouts.
This got panned quite a bit when it came out.
Some people
So,
are just idiots.
well, so one of the things that it got panned for was a perception of the story's core being about a woman who was once beautiful losing her beauty and her life wasn't worth living anymore, so she killed herself.
I can see how
But did
that
you?
could be in seen
Yeah,
that way.
I was going to say, but did you get? Because I didn't, and it was only when I was reading about it after the fact that I kind of read that there was a bit of controversy around it at the
Yeah,
time. But yeah, I didn't pick that up out of it. But once I read it, I went, okay, I can see how people would read that into it.
yeah.
But it never come across like that to me.
It doesn't to me, but I can see why
Yeah,
that could be picked up that way.
yeah,
I saw it more as in the way of, say, if you've got a terminal disease, you know, and you're living with that more than, oh no, I'm
yeah.
not pretty anymore.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you 100%. I kind of looked at it, or it spoke to me along those lines of um, the reverence, and I think that terminal disease is a really good example. But that I'm there, and my life has fundamentally changed in a bad way, and I'm fixated on how it used to be. Not that I used to be beautiful, pretty, young, or whatever it is, but that I can't do the things that I used to be able to do because I can't anymore. And you know, like in this, effectively, she becomes a shut-in, doesn't she?
Yeah,
And I think people who know more could probably resonate with this around like her getting into that sort of spiral of depression because of this. And of course, there's a really big superhero-y physical reason for it, but sometimes park that. It doesn't actually. This fantastical thing doesn't have to happen for people to get into this mindset, does it? Some people,
yeah,
it could, and that's what I kept coming back to of going. That's what I felt the story was about. But yeah, I just thought it was worth mentioning because yeah, it was. It courted some controversy at the time of being a well, you know, Lass lost her glamour, killed herself, and I think because at the end it does culminate in her ultimately convincing death that yeah, okay, it's not my time, but it is my time because I
yeah,
should be able to make a decision on when it's my time. I think people to a degree perceive that as okay, if you are a woman and you're not pretty anymore, yeah, death's the viable option for you. So yeah, but I think that perception has changed over the years. I think Neil Gaiman's done some interviews around it as well to say, look, no, really, this wasn't the intent.
yeah,
Like, I think even at one point, I think he said like it was. I think he was going to try and use Metamorpho, but I think because of his love of the more obscure characters, I think it was here is a character that you don't use in DC anymore. Let me tell a impactful story using an underutilized character.
yeah. So as a whole, I can tell by what you've said so far, fun trade for you.
Yes, yes. I said it right at the top of the show. The shortest trade so far didn't feel the shortest trade though. Felt quite dense to me, and that's not just to say it was overly wordy, but I think for very impactful stories that are full of ideas, full of things to say about the world. Uh, it felt like it took me as long to read as an 8 issue one would because of the amount of density to it.
Yeah, the thing is, with each of them, there is you read it and you're not going, oh, what's the next one? Because there's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
cliffhanger of a story beat, or you know that, oh, we're going to find out. Like with the last trade, when we're at the killer convention, it's like, oh, we've got to this, and the nasty fuckers got the kid. Oh, what's going to be next? Oh, we need to carry on. Each of them, because they are standalones and they are quite moral
Yeah.
sort of stories. With calligraphy, what would you do for fame, fortune, getting ahead, and how low and degrading will you
Yeah.
go to get that? The Cats one, as I said, take it into modern days. What will you do to make your world better?
Yeah. Yeah. When you're not happy with what's going around you, how can you change that world
Yeah,
for the better? And certainly in that case, like the cruelty of the people who may be running the world, what can we do as a group of people, as a society, to make it better?
obviously the Shakespeare one is Shakespeare. Um, so there are
We're going to have to go and see some Shakespeare now after this. I
there
feel
are
like you need
some
converting back to Shakespeare.
there are a few moral sort of bits in there, like obviously ignoring your kid for your work. What again, similar to the first one, where it's what will you sacrifice for what you do in your art in this case, and then obviously ending with facade and a big thing on assisted suicide and on people with as we both taken it as people that have got a terminal disease or something that's an illness or an ailment that is so life changing that your life isn't, to you anyway,
Yeah.
worth living anymore, and there's nothing that you can do anymore. And
Layering loneliness, depression, all of those
yeah,
things that, like, so many of us as human beings will experience at some level during our life. Yeah, like oozing with kind of gut punches and questions that you end up asking yourself about how you think you would feel in those
yeah,
situations.
we said it earlier when we were talking about reading corner. It was like, oh, Deadpool was, switch your brain off and
Did you read it after
smash through it.
this?
No, I read it before it.
Oh, because I was going to
I
say,
wish
because
I'd have done it
I can
afterwards, because
potentially
that would
see
have.
why you wanted the cleanse after this.
Yeah, no, I wish I had have done it afterwards, because that would have been a worthy cleanse. But
Yeah.
it's the thing. It's like usually I will read, because I've got really good recently. I'm doing like 4 or 5 issues a day
It's very
at the
addictive,
minute.
isn't it? This
Yeah,
reading comics malarkey. Once you get the ball rolling, it's hard to stop it.
with this, I did the first two and was like, I need
Yeah.
a bit. Got through, and then after Facade, I was like, I'm not reading anything else tonight. I
Well,
do.
I had about sort of 5 or 6 hours like open to read yesterday, and I depended on pacing, but like normally I could burn through quite a bit in that time. But I read this in that time, and that's because after each issue I stopped for a while because I wanted to kind of digest it, think about it, flick back through some of the panels to kind of go, oh, like I kind of remember this being in it. Let's have a look back at it. And that's what I kind of say about the density of it. I think it's just jam packed of content. Despite, I go back to the Dream of a Thousand Cats. It probably from a character stroke word count, it's probably one of the lower counts in any of the issues we've had so far, but it didn't make it feel any thinner for me.
No, but yeah, as a trade, definitely worth picking up. And I sort of looking at bits and pieces online, sort of after the fact. I do know we get a few of these dotted along where
yeah,
we get little runs of standalone stories, and if they are continue to be at this level and quality, yes, please. Um, Obviously, you mentioned earlier, where does it stand against the two?
yeah, and I guess as single stories and as the collected trade, because I think there's a bit of both in there. We talked we both had stories from the Sandman universe in our top 5 of what we'd read last year, didn't we? But I guess do any of these stories on their own break that pantheon at the top end? And as a collection, how does it compare to 1 and 2 for you?
So I think because it is only the 4 stories, it doesn't break 1 and 2 because 1 and 2 are so story going forward and bringing you into this world. These are the perfect side salad, or the perfect sidebar to what we've had so far, and all just as essential. But obviously, because they're not moving the main story forward, aren't at the same level as the other two. If we're going on standalones, I still put them 100 years as the best one hit. Facade and Copy and the Diner are all now fighting for second, third, fourth because I think those would be what mood I'm in, what day,
Yeah.
and where they all sit. Then Cats, then Midsummer.
I think from a singular issue side, and like I think I said on all of them, and if I didn't say it on a Facade, that's a 10 out of 10 for me as well. I think they sit along. None of them kind of necessarily went, "Oh, this is the best one ever." I think what I kind of learned in this trade is that I'll probably stop doing that for this series because I just think there's so many great singular issues. For me, this is the best trade. But it's weird because I love Doll's House and we talked about it at length. I think that's fantastic, absolutely
Yes.
amazing. And I really like this big story that they are creating. One of the things that we gave Neil Gaiman massive credit for when we read through those first 2 volumes was his ability to build such a massive universe world with so much intrigue and stuff I want to know more about. And we said there are links to this. There are obviously discussions around Dream. We get the drop of the sun, death, and the kind of leaning into endless stuff. But this really had nothing to do with the main story. I didn't care
Yeah.
because it was so good. And I do find it a bit weird to say because I do want the main story as well. I do want that, but I cared not for that. And if you'd have said to me, from this point onwards, you get nothing but singular stories, it would be a shame I never found out more about the rest of it. But I'd be happy as Larry because this was just convinced me of going. I mean, it felt more like that anthology, that kind of Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
But I think that's a bit reductive to say that because I don't think Twilight Zone was ever as good as this, is the honest truth. But with almost Morpheus and the Endless being the thing, the narrator even, or the kind of the character that appears roughly. But I
See,
think this is my favourite
yeah,
by a way.
said it's very. Because I didn't think of it until you just saying it. It's very. I said there about Twilight Zone. I'm thinking like Tales of the Crypt and like the Crypt
Yeah,
Keeper
yeah,
just appearing usually because
yeah,
like especially when the good Tales of the Crypt was on, the Crypt Keeper would always be in each of the stories
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
And it,
And that's such a kind of juxtaposition to what we come out of with the Doll's House, which, albeit had its singular issues in it, like that was almost to break up this 6-issue flowing story. Whereas here, you kind of went, no, this isn't to break up a 6-issue flowing story. These are the singular anthology tales of their own, and yeah, it's just amazing. Like the guy is brilliant, and I said this on the last one. I said this on the first one. Why didn't I like it the first time I read it? And when I say the first time I read it, for anyone who hasn't seen the others, I'd read the first trade and a bit of the second a couple of times. It never grabbed me, but this time round, it has grabbed me to the point where I just go, idiot! You could have read all of this 20 years ago, and now you're just finally kind of getting around to it. But I'm so glad that we are doing this, and there's nothing in here that has put me off of coming back for Volume 4.
Well, I own all of it, so I've got to read all of it.
Yeah, you're legally bound. But
Yes.
it is hard because it has all been so good so far, and sometimes it can feel a bit churlish to kind of go like, what's your favorite of it? But will I feel differently in 6 months' time, or when we get back to the wider main story, do I then get back into the flow of wider main story and maybe those elements resonate with me more? Maybe. But if I ask right now, if I could only read one of these volumes again of the 3 we've read, it would be this one.
See, I think I'd still go back with Doll's House,
It's good, Doll's House.
but
Very good.
it would be tight. So yes, if you've read it, what do you think down there? Favorite ones
If
of the
you've
4?
not read it, don't be like me and wait 20 plus years. Honestly, read this. It's we said it a couple of times in this. This is the sort of stuff that we talked about Deadpool earlier. We talked about Captain America earlier. Comic books allow to tell such a vast array of stories that can scratch many itches. This is one of those things that now I'm experiencing it, as I'm experiencing it, of going, this isn't scratching itch. This is fantastic. This is brilliant. This is all those novels that people say you should read because they're a cut above everything else. These are all those movies, all those songs. This is that level, and I think everyone should read it.
Yes, I second that. So as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell. Comments down there, Sandman. Be back next week with Hawkeye
Pew.
because it's
I
just
think
the
that's how
reason.
you do it. I think that's the noise an arrow makes. Pew.
Yes, because we're just putting off the one that we don't want to read just yet.
No, don't talk about it. Don't invoke its name. No, I am looking forward to talking Hawkeye, because this time around was my second read of it, and obviously it's your first read of it. Very, I said earlier, it kind of has those single issues, so there is some connectivity to, I think, what we've seen in Sandman, but very much more grounded in the Marvel universe, but an equally as fantastic story that we'll cover more so in our next episode.
Yes. So until next week, goodbye.